for joining us, everybody, in the VBJ virtual studio. Delighted to welcome today Alison Lambert.
Hello, how are you all doing?
Obviously, we're doing this because of what's happening out there. We're all locked down, and that's had massive changes to the veterinary profession and veterinary business particularly. Just give me your take on it. We're a few weeks into the crisis now, well, a month. So what were your first thoughts, and how do you think the situation's evolved across the country?
I think it's a really good time to ask that question, actually. If we'd have asked that question maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think we'd have got a completely different answer. This feels like part 2. We've been through the first lockdown, and now we're in second lockdown. So a degree of familiarity and predictability and pattern is happening for practices now. They kind of know how to do this, how to do physical distancing. And I agree with folks who said social distancing is the wrong phrase. It's physical distancing. We need to be even more closely socially connected. We need to be connected with our clients and our colleagues and our community more now than ever. So I think where practices are now in the main is accepting of where we are, recognizing they can do stuff. They've embraced remote consulting, they've embraced shipping meds, they've embraced vets answering telephones and working anaesthetic machines, which, you know, that wasn't maybe what they would be doing most of the time. We've embraced that we're in it and we have to work our way out of it. So for most people, and I do recognize that for some people this is just truly horrible for lots of different reasons, probably personal circumstance or business cycle or something. But in the main, most folks have got into a pattern. They've split their teams, they're working their way, they've changed their rotas. And if we learnt anything in this first kind of phase 1 into phase 2, is we can make bloody good decisions when we have to, and we can make them quickly. And by making them quickly, if we made a rubbish decision, we can make another one. So the thing that's impressed me the most with my colleagues is the fact that they've made decisions, they've cracked on, and they've got stuff done. And I think that's huge credit to them. In spite of everything that's going on around them, they're still managing to care for patients and care for colleagues and care for their community.
And what are the common qualities in the practices that are doing that? Because, you know, it's incredible the way the veterinary profession as a whole has responded to the crisis. As you say, they're a problem-solving profession. They've gone out there and they've got on with it. But what are some of the pitfalls? You know, even that said, you know, there's going to be a lot of people out there trying to do the best by their teams, trying to keep their clients in the loop as well. But there are challenges in that. What are some of the things that some of, not the mistakes, but maybe some of the learnings that people have been getting over the last few weeks?
We will look back on this in possibly 6 months, 12 months from now, and we'll look back and go, you know, that was a time when we realised how important some things were that we maybe not noticed before. You know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and we will look back and go, I wish we'd done that differently. Now isn't the time to start going, oh, we cocked up there and we made a bad call, because people are doing what they have to do in what are very challenging and unique times. But from my perspective, one of the things that has become really apparent is for those practices who seem to be coping is maybe the wrong word, but they seem to be becoming more accustomed to this new way of working in an easier or more comfortable way, are the ones who truly understood their customer cycle, their customer journey, and their customer experience touch points. They knew how to connect quickly. They knew what really mattered. Their values resonated with, you know, a high empathy approach to their client base. You know, we're all in it together, literally. And they were connected to their communities in a way that meant that when it went, you locked down, they knew instinctively that we need to speak, we need to reach out, we need to communicate, we need to get out there and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing now, this is what we believe to be the situation. And they did that really quickly. They did that through, you know, the biggest medium that people have started to engage with is social media and video. So they actually eyeball to eyeball like this and went, this is what's happening. They emailed, they texted, they called people. Those guys seem to have been more connected to their customer pathways, and they seem to respond better and quicker than the ones who maybe went, what do we do? We've never done this before. How do we do this? Yeah.
Well, for those practices that were maybe thinking that and thought, oh dear, what are some of the things that they can do now that they can connect with those clients, and they can make sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on, what the practice is doing, why it's suddenly charging for things perhaps it wasn't, why they're suddenly doing video consults, why you can't go in, what, all the rest of it. As you say, communication is the heart of your message, has been for years. What are the things that these practices that perhaps weren't as quick to have adopted that approach, what are the things they can take away now?
It's a very big question, and we haven't got all day, so I'll kind of précis it down a bit. There's a model that we like to use, and we usually use this in the consult room setting. It's called now, soon, later. You know, you've got 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes with a client. That client needs to know what's happening now. Right, now we're going to examine the patient. Now something's going to happen. Soon we'll be coming to a treatment plan, and later you'll either leave your dog with us or you'll go away. Now, soon, later. That frameworking of this is what we're doing now, soon we will be able to do this, and later that will happen, is painting a picture of what's probable, and then when that changes is recommunicating. So what practices need to do now is, if they haven't reached out to their client base by whatever means they've got, and that could be as simple as doing a video and saying, this is where we are, thanks for your patience, understand it's difficult times, this is where we're doing, this is what we're doing with meds collections or remote consults or whatever that is. This is what we're doing with euthanasias. That's a really distressing one at the moment for people. Don't surprise them by not letting them be there at the end. You need to say that up front. You know, you need to be really upfront with people. So use video. Pick up the phone to those people who you know will be outside of social media. Maybe they're disadvantaged somehow, that they may be unable to access social media. That you know you've got your clients that you take special care of. You always have been care in the community for a lot of people. The veterinary practice is a community hub, and you do have people who just pop in for a cup of tea, and it's social care. You know, pick the phone up to those guys. I know practices have been going around doing food deliveries, you know, dropping off meds, yeah, but actually doing grocery deliveries, drop-offs in their community. So reach out to customers, number one. Just email, text, phone call, video. Absolutely must do that. Paint the picture of what is happening, and paint a picture of what happens if they need to come in, you know, or you need a vet on your yard to see your horse. This is what will happen. You know, we can do it this way. It will be remote in the first instance. If we have to see you, we'll have to do social physical distancing. Just explain what's going on. So this is what we're doing now. You know, soon we may be able to do more things, like, you know, following the BVA and RCVS updated guidelines, we may be able to do more stuff. And later, we hope we will get back to normal, but there will be a backlog. So later will be backlog in order of priority.
So it's getting your messages out there across all channels. Less is more, or just go for it?
Do you know, one of the really brilliant things that's happened is people who would never have sat in front of a camera or, you know, literally their iPhone or whatever and spoken directly to their clients have done it. And they found that it is easier than they thought, because you've just been genuine and authentic and just saying, look, it ain't easy, but this is what we're doing to help. And, you know, you're looking at maybe 5 or 6 minute video, make it regular. Some folks are doing tea with the vet. So, you know, doing a 3:30, you know, video, Facebook Live, you know, a cup of tea with a vet and chat about your patients. It's connect with your community. Now we have to be focused on caring for, you know, our teams, our clients, and our community. We have to be connected to that now. We need to be safe. We need to keep people safe. Soon, we will be able to do more, and we can start painting that picture. And later we need to flag up there will be, you know, a backlog, and things that have been missed, like dentals or neuters or non-urgent surgical cases, will be dealt with in order of priority. We need to start flagging that up now.
Yeah, there's going to be an awful lot of change, but people have got long memories. They're going to remember the practices that responded in the right way through this, and there will be transition in the market. There will be big change in the market, and that leads me on to my next question, which is, you know, things have changed. This is forced change. How much of this change is going to live with us, and how much is this forced change going to inform the development of veterinary practice, the way it delivers to its clients, how it delivers to its clients, and perhaps also how that impacts on veterinary teams as well? How's that all going to change now and in the future? Another big question for you, Alison.
Yeah, but it's fantastic, and you know, maybe it's because I spent so many years in the Mars organization that thinking about what happens if, scenario planning, if this happens, what happens? If we can't get any meat to make dog chow, what happens? And that happened with BSE. What happens if the price of chocolate goes through the roof because there's a crisis or a war in South America? That happened. Someone's always looking at the what if scenarios. And I don't think we ever did that as a veterinary profession. I don't think we ever scenario planned and went, what happens if we don't ever see people coming through the door? How would we flex our model? We haven't become flexible in that sense. I think the biggest thing that's happened is we've been through what feels like an Apollo 13 moment. It's like you've got 30 minutes to live and your carbon dioxide monitor's blown up. So what are you going to do, or you die? I mean, it's been a real glue it all together, square pegs, round holes, doesn't really matter, cobble something together and get through phase one. And that's what we've done. We've got through phase one. Phase two will be, do you know what? We did some really good stuff. We did some bloody good stuff, actually. We made decisions really quickly. We embraced remote for our clients under our care. We managed, remote medicine shipping. We changed our behaviors. Teams became multi-skilled. Now, that might scare a few people, but the concept that everybody could muck in and do stuff, that it's a team game, that we learned that. We learned that you can't run a veterinary practice with vets only in the building as well as you can if you had a vet, a nurse, and a customer service person in the building. The teams that are running smoothly have got 3 people in the building, that the ratios are right. So I think we've learned how to do new stuff, and that will stay. I think remote communication with our clients will stay. I think continuity of care consulting, the acronym which is COC, which is really quite pleasant, really, is it not? So continuity of care consulting will be, we've seen the patient in the building, perhaps it's a cat, and it's a trauma to get that cat in. Consult 2, consult 3 may well be remote, and it will fit in under my care. I think that's a massive role. There will be some element of triaging with remote consultations, but for most people, they still quite like to see the vet they see, and in most instances it seems that most of those consults will be, the physicality element will help, but I think we'll keep remote for continuity of care and outreach, and where it's nothing else we can do. I think that will also be embraced by nurses for, imagine, weight clinics with continuity of care consults. You've seen the dog once, you've set up consult 2 with the nurse, they've done their weight management, and now we can do some remote stuff, see the dog exercising at home, look at the ball, how are they feeding them. I think there's a massive service quality position there. Medicine shipping, why are we holding massive inventory? We've got pharmacies full of boxes of stuff when actually it could be managed differently. I think that will change. And the one thing I hope will change is our attitude to the fact that people are actually quite chilled about paying for veterinary services. People are paying 35, 40 quid for consults through some format.
Well, I mean, that's very interesting. Again, that's been central to your message for years about the ratio between medicine profits and charging for services and fees. But one thing that I wanted to pick up on was the telemedicine aspect, the video consults, because I know there have been a couple of stories in the press this week that have been very negative. I think they were kind of set up local journalists looking for a story, but you say there are a lot of practices that have been forced now to take this on, and what's the advice in terms of the discussion, the way that service is communicated and charged for? And I know you've also done a lot of work through the Onswitch channels as well, with and just a few tips on the teleconsult itself.
2 questions there. One, I think if you're referring to the particular journalistic piece that happened in my hometown of Hull, okay. I would strongly recommend the profession read the comments, because do you know what? Most of those comments were, get a life, love. You've got a cat, care for it. You chose to go in, you got to pay for it. We need to, if we're going to read this kind of stuff on social media, we need to learn how to do a thematic analysis of what's being said, not read the headline. Either don't look at it, or if you are going to look at it, just scroll right through and see the themes coming through. Because the thematics on that were, do you know what? Get a life, woman. You've got a cat, you've got to pay for it. You chose to go in on a bank holiday, and that's a fair price, so get over yourself. And when you did read through them, you came away with that feeling of, do you know what? Most people are actually okay. So I think we as a profession need to start changing our approach to how we respond to what is, clickbait journalism. Yeah, you're a journalist, you know what it's like. Sometimes there's a bit of a slow day and you think, oh, what should we do? We'll just poke a stick and see what happens. But we are professionals and we need to respond to this differently and go, do you know what? We know our clients pay our wages. We know our clients pay our bills, because if they didn't, none of us would be here. This profession has got such a positive amount of goodwill coming through. You just read the feeds of the practices where people are going, we're so pleased you could do this for us. We're so pleased you were there. We get what you're doing. And yet we focus on one. Can we focus on the majority? And the solution to pollution is dilution. Okay, there's always going to be one. Look at all the other stuff. Just dilute that bad thought out of your head. And when it's your own, I get that. It sucks. It really does when it's about you. But you know what? Vast majority of people, the vast majority of the time, are absolutely, totally understanding of, we're in a pandemic. You can't be with your human relatives as they are dying. So the fact you had to pay a bit more for your cat on a bank holiday, maybe, put it in a perspective, will you? So I think that one, we need to just learn how to respond to that. I think that's quite an interesting one. And I can't remember what your other question was, but I just thought that was quite interesting.
It was
what was the other bit?
Very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with the sentiment of what you said. But it was about what practices can do to get their clients to transition to these platforms and get them to understand that. Because for me, that transition to telemedicine, to video consulting, is almost a distillation of your message. If that's I can't think of a better example of the veterinary service really pared down to it's just effectively images and words, but that's what it is. That's a tough sell in some scenarios. So what's your advice for practices in that area in terms of transitioning some of their customer base that can be serviced that way to that, and the discussions around the fact, yes, you're going to have to pay for it. It's not something that's not just a Facebook chat. It's a consult.
There's two things there. Let's just go with the first thing. If we're going to really make this work, we have to be professional and we have to have a process map. So we have to understand the client inbound contact. So what's actually happening is client phone calls into practices have stabilized. I've looked now at 60 or 70 practices data, and their call volume spiked during the first week of lockdown, and then on the bank holiday after there was a change in the regulatory and the BVA advice. But other than that, it's exactly the same as it was this time last year. So inbound calls are pretty static. We just got fewer people in the building answering them, so it feels busy. What has changed is more emails, more social media messaging inbound. People are messaging more, and people are responding to texts that practices are sending out. So number one, first thing is, are you sure you want to be reminding people by text of something you can't deliver? Change the message on that text. So if you haven't already checked that, please check that like now. Change that message. It's okay to text, but don't say come in for your booster if you're not doing them. Just make sure you've got that one right. So the process map is client contact's going to happen. How we then manage that, the clients need to know they've got options. So, whichever of those client contacts is coming in, one of those would be, you can have a consultation via video, or you can come into the practice. So that would be an option phase. So it becomes part of the process map. But the booking of that remote consult has to be done by the customer service team, because if you've got vets trying to give phone advice and then try and book a consult, it becomes a chat. Now, it's not. It's a consult. Put it in the diary. It has a slot. There's a time. It's set up the same way, and the owners are given pre-remote consult questionnaire or send photos. So we have to be disciplined about the process map. And of those, interesting, just be looking at some data from a couple of practices, of the remote consults, we're kind of seeing about a 14 or 15% of the remote consults becoming in building or face-to-face consults. So it will become a sequence. Do we have to explain to our clients that, online stuff works? Do we have to explain to our clients that ease and convenience of remote shipping of meds works? Do we have to explain to our clients that life's, a touch of a button in a device like this, your mobile? I don't think we need to teach them. We just need to say we do it. If anything, the hesitation with this has been with us as a profession, because we're inherently conservative and we like to be, maybe slightly too cautious, but appropriately prudent, perhaps. Most of our client base, if you look at the predominant client base from the companion animal point of view, cat, dog, horse, cat, dog, rabbit, horse, you've got an age profile of people where the majority, of the client base sit, which are entirely running their lives through a handheld device, flights, trains, parking your car, banking. The idea that you would just do that and, oh, here's a thing I click and I see the vet, that's not going to be new to them. The bit that's new is that we are offering it. And I think the embracing of that is what we need to get to. And we've seen it's worked. They always were happy to pay.
Okay.
But it was us. We didn't believe that they would pay for veterinary opinion. They do pay for veterinary opinion. And we're being quite bullish about it. People are charging same price for remote consult as face-to-face. Some are doing, a 70% fee. Some are, you're playing around with it. But people are charging, and I think that stays, and we need to just acknowledge it's a new service, quality proposition. I see a huge role for continuity of care consults.
That's really interesting. I mean, we haven't got all day, which is a shame because I could talk to you all day, Alison. But I'm going to use the Boots and bosses of Boots and Pets and Home have both come out and made statements and used the phrase trigger lasting business change. So in that context, could you finish us up with your advice, what businesses need to do now, what they need to do in 3 months' time, and what they need to do next year and onwards, because this change is happening. It will continue to change the landscape during those timeframes. So how can, obviously I'm not asking you to predict the future as such, but what can businesses do, some really good solid take-home things for now, 3 months and next year?
I think now the primary goal for everybody is to maintain safety within and keep the workplace safe, keep the clients safe, and keep the community safe. We have to consider we are in a pandemic and we don't know where this is going. It seems to be that we've maybe passed the peak, but we need to maintain some safety. To do that, in the moment, we need to be very mindful of the people we've got working. So now I would revisit who is actually in your unit, your team. And if you have furloughed your customer care team and your nurse team and you're running on pure vet, your workload distribution is going to be to pot at the moment. You'll need to reconfigure your workload and try and get your inbound call comms, contact comms and consumer comms back, because that is actually at normal level. The bit that's not normal is the clinical bit, so you need to rebalance that team. So that's what I would be doing now. Soon, as in pretty soon, we need to start thinking about, as we filter back in workload as we come out of phase 2 and maybe into a variant of lockdown 3, we need to be really planning ahead and thinking, okay, where are those elective procedures? How do we filter them back in? Do we need to run double op shifts? Will we need to, when we get back to some degree of normality, have to do, op Saturdays and op Sundays to get the backlog away? Because if we start doing more work in May, June, we're going to hit the peak of summer for the UK. So you'll have all the delayed procedures on top of the summer demand. Because as it appears, everyone went out and got a poppy. So there's going to be a load of stuff to do. So we need to start planning pretty soon now. So now keep safe, soon start thinking how you're going to, break back in that caseload. Later, keep the stuff that's worked, keep the stuff that worked, keep your remote access, keep your client communication going. One of the big ones for me would be, and I suspect that people have realized they can get a lot of work done with fewer people in one building than they were getting done with more people across 2 or 3 buildings, and the clients were accepting of it. That's a pandemic effect, I get that. But there might be a really serious rebasing of your cost base. So, looking after your cash, looking after your model and going, could we do this differently? Could we have found a better way of delivering this? Did we need the branch practice after all? Or actually, is it something that we can maybe do something else with? So now is keep safe. Soon, start thinking about how you go back, protecting your cash position. If you haven't applied for your furlough money, you haven't applied for any government support, then do it. And then later, I think be brave. It may be you can run a leaner, more customer-focused service quality business with a different makeup of people and team roles, some of which you may work from home constantly. And it might be you don't need as many buildings. There's a really brave decision-making thing to go on. But whichever way you add this one up, the constant in all of this, because there is a constant, the constant is people will need vets because they've got cats, dogs, horses, farms. They need vets. how we deliver that after this is over. I think they have learnt that they can also access care remotely and differently. So I don't think they'll want to change. I don't think the customer base will want to go back to hanging around with a horse on the yard waiting for the vet to rock up, or queuing for 40 minutes at the practice because there's been an emergency. I think they will have a different perspective as well. So as with all things, sort your customer understanding out, look after those teams, get the team experience sorted, really get down into the basics of your numbers and your data, and then figure out how you operationally deliver that. So I think this has just been one big CPD exercise. When we look back, we'll have learned so much.
And I'm at the risk of keeping our interview going longer, but I mean, one word keeps springing into my head is data. How important is that? Just a passing shot on that. Just riff on data for me for a couple of minutes, Alison.
Oh, do you know what? Do you know what? People that maybe don't know quite what we do might think we're a bit tree-hugging, liberal, nonsense, happy, clappy people about customer experience. We are so far from that. This is about data. Businesses work when you know your numbers from point of primary contact. So know your numbers. How many people are calling you? How many people are emailing you? How many people are messaging you? How many people are actually getting in? How many calls are you making out? What are you doing? What's your core pipeline look like, origination? And then of all of those, how many that ever become a consultation, whether that remote or face-to-face? And I'm literally sitting here looking at a practice's data now. I mean, this same period last year, this practice saw just over 1,000 consult touch points. This year, they've seen 195 remote consults and 196 face-to-face. So they're 67% down on client touch points.
That's
now, but the interesting thing is the revenue doesn't follow that. So the revenue doesn't follow that because they're still doing some high value revenue, which is, emergencies, welfare stuff. So the big ticket items are still happening. It's really interesting when you look at your data. It's not quite as bad. It's not great, but for some practices, it's not quite as bad as you might think. So you need to know your call conversion to consult. You need to know your call conversion to remote consult. You need to know your remote consult conversion to real face-to-face consult. And ongoing, you'd need to know your consult 1 to consult 2 conversion because most cases do need a follow-up consult. So data, true revenue data weekly at the moment is probably, for most people, if they just look at their accounts once a year, I hope you've learned that you really need to have access to your data real time. The businesses who are moving quickly and making massive decisions are moving and are ahead of this are the ones who have got line of sight of their data and are making daily decisions based on what happened today, literally, not waiting for the accounts in a month's time or in a quarter's time. And that's something I've noticed talking to people. The folks that we've worked with over the years, they've been drilled into them to have balanced scorecard data, so financial data, customer data, team data, and operational data at their fingertips. And I'm ringing them up going, what is going on? They're going, this. I'm going, aha. Yeah, other people going, we won't get our data till the end of May. And it's like, hell, we've had half of March and all of April wiped out. You need to know what's going on. So data is absolutely the core of anything to do with customer experience, which is the core of everything to do with marketing, which is the core of everything to do with finance and revenue. So for those that never thought it mattered and thought it was a bit happy-clappy, well, maybe this is one of the times where after all this is over, then maybe you really need to focus in on, your customer journey mapping and your customer experience and really understand what the core numbers look like.
I knew you'd take more than 2 minutes, Alison.
Sorry about that.
That was really great. And I think we're going to do this again, hopefully, maybe. If I know you're busy as hell, even in lockdown. But I'd like to do this again. And I'd just like to thank you for coming in virtually, albeit to our well-lit studio. And
that was cool.
It was brilliant. And thanks very much, Alison.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And as I say to everybody, there will be something come out of this which you will keep and you will be stronger. It doesn't feel like it right now, but we will get there. And we'll look forward to part 2.